Welcome to Inside Out. I'd like to take you on a journey through various videos talking about some tools and some tips for personal efficiency. In 2015, we saw the Pixar cartoon Inside Out, and it offered a window into emotion, something that we all experience constantly, but something that a lot of times we don't reflect on quite so much. We're missing a lot of times self-awareness when it comes to our emotions. And looking at the title of that movie, Inside Out, it actually coincides with one of the core concepts in Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And that's why I want to talk about this today, because reading this book really is a powerful experience for anybody who does it, because it's not simply reading a book, it is a life-changing experience. Even the subtitle of the book calls it Powerful Lessons in Personal Change, and that's been my experience as well. Studying psychology, one of the things that's been very interesting is listening to the different psychologists and their theories, and Albert Bandura talks about self-efficacy. And self-efficacy is a person's particular set of beliefs that determine how well one can execute a plan of action in prospective situations. So if I'm thinking about climbing a mountain, well, if I really believe that I'm able to do that. For example, if we're talking about mountain climbing, with ropes and pulleys and whatnot, well, I don't think there are pulleys, my self-efficacy would be very low, because I don't think I can do it, at least not in a first moment. I might be able to train myself to do it, I might be able to believe in myself in that way, but just you give me the mountain and the ropes, I'm not going to be able to do it. So this kind of goes along those lines. And when we look at this Inside Out, because a lot of times we can look at a book like Stephen Covey's 7 Habits for Highly Effective People, and we can think that it's very focused on just kind of getting things done, which is actually the title of another book that I like a lot, but that's a story for a different time. But we see that people experience an inner hunger, a deep need for personal congruency and effectiveness, and for healthy, growing relationships with other people. We all feel alone sometimes. We all can feel isolated. And this book, I think, can really help us a lot in order to overcome that and to establish real relationships. First, the most important relationship, well, obviously our relationship with God, but talking in more human terms, our relationship with ourselves, and then our relationship as well with others. One of the things that Covey talks about at the beginning of the book is the difference between personality and character ethics. And I think this is a really key clarification, because at first, maybe at first glance, we could look at it as a type of personality ethics. What is that? When you're just kind of learning techniques, if you smile and you're looking at the person's lips, and that you're able to have some type of a connection, kind of all these little psychological tricks that maybe you hear about every once in a while, that would be more of a personality ethics. And it's really just focused on, kind of getting what I want. And it could fall into being a little bit manipulative. But on the other hand, we have character ethics, and this is really what Covey is emphasizing, and what I think is helpful for all of us in kind of the theme of today's video. Another important concept that we have in Covey is the concept of the paradigm. Now, paradigm, we can look at this as a pattern, or Covey talks about it as a map, and this is kind of the mental map that we have of our relationships, of the way that things work at work, the way we study, and kind of they're the preconceptions, but that help us interpret the world around us. And I was interested, reading this again with the experience of studying psychology, because these are basically what in psychology are called constructs. And in psychological constructs, we refer to concepts that are not directly observable, but are hypothesized to be functioning with the wrong hypothesized to be influential in determining or explaining behavior, right? So if I, assume that other people are out to get me, well, that's going to affect the way that I'm dealing with others. Whereas when I have faith in others' goodness, well, that's also going to affect the way that I act. Now, it's interesting, because when we're going through life, we have to deal with reality, but we have to also deal with the way things ought to be, which are our values. Right? I think people should be honest. Well, that affects the way I go through life, and it affects the way that I treat others. And our values have to align with reality if we're going to navigate the world in which we live effectively. One of the things that I really like as well is the principle of growth and change. You know, maybe for us now, we think a lot about investment in a speculative atmosphere. We can think about this with NFTs, right? Where people are buying the rights to certain images, and they're buying this because they figure that in the future it's going to be worth a lot more. That's speculation. Or we see the same thing with Bitcoin, where there's only so many Bitcoins that are able to exist because of the way the algorithms work. And so if you buy this Bitcoin, well, you're betting that in the future, more people are going to want what you have. And so following a strict supply and demand, what you have is going to be worth a lot more in the future. And you know, speculation, that it has its own dangers. I don't want to get into that so much. But one of the things that Covey mentions, I think is something that's very important if we do want to grow in a character ethics way, is that we have to follow the law of growth and change. And here it's good to look at the farmer. You know, a farmer, he takes the seed, he puts the seed in the soil, he waters it, starts to grow, he needs the sun, all these different elements, but especially time. You know, you can't rush a watermelon, right? You need the time in order for it to grow. And that's something important as well for us to take into account as we go through these different principles, these different habits of personal effectiveness, because they do take time as well, right? And it's one of the interesting things, one of the things I really enjoy about the book is that there's always the opportunity to grow and to start over. Then one of the things he says that I think is really interesting, the way we see the problem is the problem, right? Because we can, we can see other people as a problem. But really, and this is one of my big takeaways from this book, whenever I'm experiencing something difficult, I always look, well, what's happening inside of me? And what am I doing to contribute to this problem? And what am I doing to look for a possible solution? And no matter what it is, and I've dealt with difficult people, and people have done bad things to me, but I'm always looking at, well, what is my part? What part do I play in all of this? And how can I use this to make myself better? And then even those difficult circumstances can make us better people. Habit, obviously one of the key phrases here, or one of the key terms. In his book, Covey says that habit is the intersection of knowledge, skill, and desire. And we need a theoretical paradigm, right? We need to have an idea of how things work. We need to have a particular skill or ability, and we need to have motivation in order to form a habit. And that can be the base of our future behavior in such a way that is aligned to our goals. Now, what is effectiveness? The 7 habits are habits of effectiveness because they're based on principles that bring the maximum long-term beneficial results possible. They become the basis of a person's character, creating an empowering center of correct maps, right? So, going back to that idea of the paradigm, well, we want to have the right maps in our head. If you're in Chicago and you have a map for New York, well, it's not going to help you get around. And so in the same way, we have to see our different relationships and the way that we're dealing with the world if we have the right maps. And then finally, and before I close in this video, I'd like to talk about personal and public victory. And I actually really like the structure of the habits, because the first 3 habits, and we'll see this in the upcoming weeks, the first 3 habits are focused on personal victory, right? Where I'm able to move from dependence to independence, because, we're all born dependent. As human beings, we're actually very vulnerable when we're born. It could very easily turn out very negatively for us, right? We're dependent on our parents in a very real way. And we're moving towards independence in those first 3 habits. But that's not the end of the story. And that's where we have to keep going with the 4th, 5th, and 6th habit, because that moves us towards interdependence, where we ourselves, yes, we're more independent men and women, but we also recognize the value of the society, the family in which we live. And so I think that's fascinating as well. By learning to take true responsibility for our own actions, we are better equipped to deal with others. The 7 habits are help to take stock of our own abilities and live at peace with ourselves and others. So I'm looking forward to this journey with you. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know, and be assured of my prayers. God bless.